There's a system that generates electricity from your roof. It doesn't need solar panels or batteries. It doesn't require permits or contracts with anyone. It costs dollars in hardware materials. It was discovered more than 200 years ago. Electric companies buried it before you were born. They didn't bury it because it failed. They buried it because it worked too well. Electricity that you cannot measure cannot be billed. And what isn't billed cannot sustain a $400 billion per year industry. This is the story of the generator that fits in your pocket. Welcome to Forbidden Camping. If these stories matter to you, subscribe and activate the bell. Here we open the safes that the industry locked with a key. In 1821, a physicist named Thomas Seebeck had two strips of metal in his laboratory. One strip was shiny copper, the other was dark gray bismuth. He joined them at the ends to form a closed circuit. Then he heated one end with the palm of his hand. The needle of the compass he had nearby began to move. He was paralyzed watching that needle. He had generated an electromagnetic field with the heat of his hand. No fuel, no spark, no chemical reaction, just two different metals and a temperature difference. He published his results that same year. Scientists all over Europe replicated the experiment in their laboratories. Everyone obtained the same result. The effect was named after him, the Seebeck effect. Two different metals plus a differential heat source equals electricity. That's simple, that brutal. 80 years later, in 1902, engineers understood the real scale of the discovery. Wilhelm H.W.X. documented that metal roofs exposed to the sun generated constant temperature differences. A zinc roof at noon can reach 70 EOC. The same roof at 3 a.m. drops to 10.0, a 60 EOC difference every day without doing anything. HWX connected strips of copper and galvanized iron to that metal roof. The system generated continuous electric current for 12 hours. No human intervention, no fuel, no cost. Farms in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland began using homemade versions of the system. Farmers without access to the electrical grid built thermogenerators with copper and iron from hardware stores. The most basic system cost the equivalent of dollars today. Here is where the story gets strange. In 1923, the large electric companies began their massive expansion. They laid cables across Europe and North America in less than 15 years. With the cables came signed contracts and meters installed on every wall. Also came the idea that generating your own electricity at home was dangerous. It was no accident. It was a documented industrial public relations campaign. Homemade thermogenerators disappeared from applied physics manuals. They disappeared from hardware catalogs and electrical workshops. They disappeared completely from public conversation. But the Seebeck effect did not disappear. The laws of thermodynamics cannot be patented or bought. They can only make you forget they exist. I gathered everything I could find about this system in one place. The exact materials, the measurements, and the metals that work best, the most common mistakes when building thermoelectric cells and how to avoid them. All in the complete Forbidden Camping package. Step-by-step homemade thermogenerators with local hardware materials. The map of metal combinations with the highest voltage differential. Methods to maximize the thermal difference between the hot roof and the night sky. Energy storage systems without lithium batteries. More than 10 guides in one place. No detours. Straight to the point. The link is in the description, but stay here. The video has just begun. Now the numbers, because numbers are impossible to ignore. A copper and iron cell with a 30 O difference generates between a 0.2 and 0.7 V. That seems little with a single metal cell. Connect 20 cells in series, and you have between 4 and 14 V. Enough to charge a phone directly from the roof. Enough to power emergency LED lighting all night. A researcher from the University of Freiburg documented this in 2017. A matrix of thermoelectric cells with a 50 O difference generates up to 120 W per square meter. No photovoltaic panels, no $10,000 inverters installed on the roof. The difference between your roof at noon and the same roof at dawn easily exceeds 20 FV. That happens in almost every climate zone on the planet, 365 days a year. If you've made it this far, you already know more about independent energy than 99% of people. Subscribe and share with someone who needs to remember what they made us forget. Everything the industry buried is in the complete package. The link is in the description. Now stay with me. What comes next is the part no one wants you to hear. So why isn't this everywhere? Because no electrician has ever mentioned it to you. The global electric industry generates $400 billion a year just from residential electricity distribution and billing. The model is simple. They generate, you consume, they charge every month. For that model to work, you need to depend on them absolutely. You cannot have an alternative. You cannot have an independent plan. The Seebeck effect is exactly that, a plan that doesn't need their permission. You cannot patent the laws of physics. You cannot create dependence when someone generates electricity from their own roof. You cannot charge a meter to someone who doesn't need the grid. The entire economic model of electricity distribution depends on your ignorance, and that's why the homemade thermogenerators had to disappear from the books. not because they were dangerous, but because they were too independent. The solar panel industry also doesn't want you to know this. That market moves $150 billion a year and grows at double digits. A basic home solar panel costs between $3,000 and $8,000 installed. A homemade copper and iron thermogenerator costs dollars in hardware materials. One can be sold, the other cannot. One creates dependence on certified installers, the other does not. One requires inverters, regulators, and factory warranties. The other requires only two metals and heat. This is the part that should make you angry. The technology always existed. The knowledge was always available. They just taught you to look the other way. Now I'm going to show you exactly how to build it. You need number 14 copper wire, the same one sold in any hardware store. You need number 16 galvanized iron wire. You need electrical tape and a basic multimeter to measure voltage. The total cost in materials does not exceed $3 at any local hardware store. First step, cut 1 meter of copper wire and 1 meter of galvanized iron wire. Second step, twist both wires together at one end, forming the hot junction. This junction goes to the hottest point on your roof, over the metal tile exposed to the sun. Third step, separate the opposite ends and connect them to the multimeter. That separated end is the cold junction, which should remain in the shade or in open air. Fourth step, measure the voltage between the two ends with the multimeter in DC mode. With a 30 ohm difference between the two junctions, you will see between 0.2 and 0.5. V. That is the Seebeck effect working on your roof in real time. To increase power, build more pairs, and connect them in series. Each additional pair adds voltage to the total roof system. With 20 pairs connected in series, you have enough voltage to charge a portable battery bank. A camper in Oaxaca built a system of 30 pairs in his off-grid cabin. He used it for 2 years to power LED lighting and charge his emergency radio. The total cost of his installation was $9 in hardware materials from the town. $9. 2 years of independent electricity, no contract, no meter, no bill. The difference between that camper and 98% of people is simple. He knew that physics has no price. He knew that the sun's heat on the zinc roof is real energy that no one can charge him for. And he knew that building your own power source is not a technical act. It is an act of independence. This knowledge did not die. It was waiting for someone to open the safe and bring it to light. If this video changed the way you see the roof of your house, subscribe and share it. Every time this video is shared, the industry loses a captive consumer. Every homemade copper and iron installation is a bill that doesn't reach the end of the month. This is not a tutorial. It is resistance. The next safe opens soon, and what's inside weighs even more. Yeah,